Hey everyone, it's Amanda with the San Diego Lifestyle, and I'm here today with Mary Ann Mariani. She is an incredible person. I can't wait to tell you more about her. She has been a speaker coach here in San Diego for many, many years, and she works with people to become better presenters, which is definitely something that I need to learn more about, but I think everybody can kind of learn more about that. So she teaches people how to better present their message, and she's been working with executives and leaders on helping them craft their message to make it more compelling for their audience for a very long time. So you can tell us a little bit more about your background, but welcome Mary Ann, and definitely tell us a little bit more about how you came to start Kingdom Presenters.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to share a little bit about what I'm able to do with Kingdom Presenters. And this journey started a while ago. I've been doing this for 20 years.
Wow.
And I really grew to have an appreciation for a clear and compelling message when I was a part of the Apple Computer Macintosh launch team.
Wow.
So, dates me a little bit, but it's fun.
Yes.
I then had the opportunity to work for Electronic Data Systems out of Dallas, and they really helped me to understand the importance of taking your message globally and how that can operate on a global level to have a greater impact. And then the last 18 years, I have had the opportunity to spend with 2Connect, a local company here in San Diego, premier presentation training company.
Okay.
And that's where I've gotten to hone a lot of the things that I share through my Kingdom Presenters work. And we work with companies like J&J, Home and Garden TV, locally LPL Financial, and many others.
Wow.
And then back in 2008, the Lord put in my mind to take the passion I have for the work I do and to create Kingdom Presenters, which is a focus on nonprofit Christian ministries and other organizations that have important messages to get out, but don't always have access to the resources to do that.
Sure.
And so it's been put on my heart to help them to create clear and compelling messages, and that's been what I've been pursuing alongside my 2Connect work ever since.
Wow, that's so exciting. So do you just work with people in San Diego, or do you travel? Do you work with people outside of the state, or?
Well, I love that I get to do work here in San Diego, my hometown, but yes, I do have the opportunity to travel. Over the last 10 years, I've had the opportunity to work in many of the states here in the US, but also in Europe.
Oh, wow.
I had an opportunity to go to London, France, and to Budapest, Hungary.
Oh my goodness.
For Campus Crusade for Christ, and they have what they call the Eastern European Development Institute,
Okay.
which trains all their leadership in Eastern Europe, and I was a coach to them for their presentation skills for 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
It was great
Did you
fun.
have to work with different languages, or how did that work?
I did. I learned a lot about working with a translator, which was a little newer to me. I had worked with a translator in Shanghai, China, for Chrysler years back, but I hadn't recently worked with one, and so it was quite an awakening for me. So I learned that I'm not perfect either. What happened at one point is I had a coworker go with me because there were so many people we were training, and I was looking at the translator with kind of a funny look, like, why are you talking over me? Not realizing he was translating because no one had told me he was there to translate.
Oh my gosh. You're like, will you stop? Every time I talk, you talk.
Of course, we were there for 3 days, and the rest of the time was great, and he was a fabulous guy. And
Good.
I just learned I needed to slow my pace down a little bit and allow them to absorb because the Russian participants did need the translator, where the others had English as a strong second language.
Oh, okay. So a lot of them understood. But I think
Yes.
a lot of words, even in English, are totally different, especially descriptive words on how you have to be and talk and slowly and quickly. And I think we have a lot more, or maybe the other languages have more words and we don't have as many. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what we find is pace makes a big difference, but also we, at least in the U.S., I know we're prone to filler words, ums, ahs, things like that, which are not so bad because they don't mean anything. But when we use a filler word that means something, like basically, then someone with a second language of English is thinking, why is it so basic, when really that's not what we meant. So we have to be aware of things like that. There's a few other nuances, but that just gives you a sense of it.
Yeah. So what exactly is a speaker coach?
A lot of people ask that question, and sometimes they might think it has something to do with accent reduction or language change. But in the role that I have, and many coaches like myself, is we're helping people to be able to create and deliver clear, concise, and compelling messages so that their audience can understand and respond to in the way that they hope. In today's environment, that's not always so easy because there's a variety of mediums in which we share our messages, which can make it complicated. But I often find when people want to use a speaker coach, they do it initially thinking it's because they need preparation or out of fear of speaking.
Okay.
Number one,
yeah,
public
definitely.
fears, public speaking. And I find, though, in the work that I've been doing over this last 10 years is really focused on two areas that speaker coaches can be a big benefit to someone. And that's, first of all, what is their main message?
Okay.
How do we get to a clear and concise message?
Sure.
And because people are drowning in data, they don't want to hear a lot of noise. They need to have a very concise message so that the audience can receive it well and be able to act upon it.
Sure.
And then the second part that I find very valuable is how do we wrap your story around their story? So in other words, how do we wrap the speaker story around the audience story? Because it's really about them. And so how do we help them be a part of what we're doing so they want to join us in those efforts and make a difference?
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of times when I'm starting to talk to people more, especially in my video services company, I'm realizing how much more it is about them than about what I'm saying and what I'm actually bringing value to the conversation. So I know my husband met you when he was starting to do a lot of his speaker coach things for speeches specifically and small group seminars. So do you do a lot of like big time groups, or are they smaller groups, or how do you?
Yes, that's a good question, and it's a little bit of all of that.
Okay.
I find at Kingdom Presenters, I'm often helping individuals and organizations when they are trying to craft a message and deliver on that for fundraising, for ministry or church outreach, for rallying the team to get things done and get some support.
Okay.
And those can sometimes be small groups or larger groups. And then I often find myself helping people like your husband who are authors, speakers, entrepreneurs, who have important messages to get out with the expertise that they have, but they want to take that wide variety or that expanse of information and how do I bring it down to something that is more of a TED Talk or a simple message? Because nowadays audiences don't give us as much time as we used to get. So how do we take all that and make it worthwhile for the audience and for the speaker themselves?
And is there a big difference in if they're speaking to just one or two people as opposed to speaking to a really large group? Or is it basically the same things that you teach?
I think that there's preparation needed for both because the listener, whether it be one listener or many, would like to get the most out of the conversation and the communication. And so a little bit of preparation is going to go a long way, even if it's for one person.
Okay.
Now, the nuance changes because it becomes a lot more conversational and two-way when you're speaking to someone else, one-on-one or one to small group, versus a very large audience. Lots of ways we can bring the audience into our conversation, but it's going to be a little bit more passive, like rhetorical questions and uses of illustrations and things like that, versus more like we're speaking back and forth to each other.
Okay. Do you use some of the tactics like raise your hand if you've done this or things like that?
Absolutely. Anytime you can make it a active experience versus a passive experience and engage their minds and hearts in what you're doing can go a long way.
So give me an example of a time that you worked with someone that worked with a really large group.
An example that's actually relevant here to San Diego is there's a national organization called the Barnabas Group.
Okay.
And their mission is to bring marketplace leaders together with ministries to help them in terms of time, talent, and network, to help them really take that ministry to the next level. They have a chapter here in San Diego. It meets quarterly, and the speakers that come to that are only given 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
It's a true TED Talk. So taking their ministry message and crafting it down to 15 minutes. And the audience is often a few hundred people, businessmen and women who've come there with really wanting to hear their story, but wanting to also know how that story can be impacted by the way they can contribute. And so helping them to match that business story and the ministry story together for that rather large audience of a couple hundred people is just a way for me to be able to share in that adventure of that ministry.
Okay, so how exactly does your process work then?
Well, that's a good question. And when people aren't used to getting to work with a coach in this capacity, they're often feeling a little bit fish out of water. And so the first and foremost thing is to realize that everyone has an important message to share and a voice that only certain people can hear. So first and foremost, as we look at how can you be yourself, but still get the important information across that you'd like to. And so we sit down, and usually I'll find out a little bit about the person and what they're trying to share. And often they're their most themselves when they're sharing with me initially, their passion and excitement for their message or their organization. And I'm capturing thoughts on that as they're writing it down. And then we talk through a little bit of structure, because structure goes a long way to help a person prepare an organized talk that audiences can take in.
Okay.
And I introduce speakers to what I call my love approach, which allows them to have a very simple method in order to organize their content in a way that audiences can receive the message and they gain the results that they want.
A love approach. So what exactly is that?
The love approach is...
Don't tell me too much. Don't give it all away.
Probably simplest to describe what the LOVE acronym stands for. It's a simple approach that I share with people to structure their talks. L is listen to God first, because my audience often is Christian speakers and they want to align their communication with God's will.
Sure.
The second is to organize their story, because once again, audiences are drowning in data, so a little bit of structure goes a long way to help those important messages stand out, and so that audiences can connect with the message.
Yeah, and take away all the stuff that doesn't matter too. I'm sure that's a big part of it.
That's a big part of it. Yes, because most of us, when we have a passion around something, plus the content that we know around it, we tend to want to bring the whole thing to the table. But audiences aren't quite ready for that. So we're like, how do we bring that in a little bit? Did that with your husband.
Yes, definitely.
And create the story around what the information is.
Yeah.
Why is it so significant to this listener now, or this group? The V is value your audience. And that's really that piece around how do we wrap our story around their story and connect our information in a meaningful way to them. I have to say, in 20 years of working with individuals on presentations, the most forgotten thing is the audience.
Really?
We forget, we speak to the audience, not with the audience. And we want to be able to bring them in, because they like that and we like that.
Yeah.
And then the E is enjoy sharing confidently, because that's you showing up in your best way. And when we've done a little bit of this homework ahead of time, showing up confidently is much easier to do.
Yeah, that's definitely the scariest part, I feel like, especially for new speakers that just on their first time. Do you ever go with people to their speech or to their programs and kind of see the final product?
Oh, that's the reward for me. That's the blessing for me, is to be able to see them step into sharing their message with confidence, but also with excitement and passion and joy, and they own their stories, and I feel like a proud mom whenever it's done.
Are there a lot of other speaker coaches in San Diego, or is there a lot of competition?
You know, it's interesting. There is absolutely a lot of resources, tons of resources out there. There's books, there's tapes, there's coaches. And I'd say hallelujah, because the more people can tap into individuals like myself, the better speakers they become, and the better their audience leaves with a good message and in a way that they can accept it. So I don't feel there's a lot of competition, especially when it comes to the arena of nonprofit and Christian ministry work, entrepreneurs and authors and speakers. And yet, even though there are several of us out there, it's a great thing that there is.
Yeah, that's true. There can never be enough of really refining how you do things and how you can get your message across.
And just like each person has an individual voice that can be heard by some, I think different coaches resonate with different people. And I encourage people to get out and meet as many people as you can. And if there's a good coach that connects with you and helps you get your message out in a way that's important to your audience, go with that person. And not every coach is going to be the same for every student, so to speak.
Yeah, I think there's probably coaches that are more kind of harsh about their critical feedback and kind of what you can do. How do you find a balance with that as far as like telling them what's wrong with their speech without saying this needs to be fixed or delete this whole part of your life? Or how do you dance around that delicately?
It can be challenging, and what we found is, this is a philosophy I learned at To Connect and carry it through at Kingdom Presenters, is the gentleman who, I can't think of his name right now, but he was the CEO of 3M company, the Post-it note company.
Okay.
And he said, I don't want to correct your paper, I want to help you get an A. And so we try to bring out all that is right, and then show where, if there's a gap between what could be the best you showing up and where you're at now, what's going to help you get there specifically? What's the model, the tool, the story? How can we help that show up?
And what if a person's really adamant as far as like, I want this part in, or I want to say this a certain way? Are you just kind of...
It's they own it. They own it.
We'll see how the feedback goes.
Yeah, usually if they're married to it, it's for a reason, and we want to acknowledge that, and often just a minor adjustment to that will be a win-win.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you're not coaching? Is there anything fun you do here in San Diego?
Oh, I love San Diego, and so I'm married. I have a wonderful husband, and we have on Sunday, 15-year-old daughter in high school, and so we spend a lot of time doing outings as family, and our daughter is a competitive springboard diver, so we spend a lot of time poolside, which San Diego, best place to be by the pool.
Yes.
And then we have a dog named Mia, and so you asked about what's a fun thing to do in San Diego.
Yes.
Well, every March, the Helen Woodward Rescue Center holds a puppy love dog run.
Oh, fun.
And all the San Diegans come with their dogs. There's hundreds of dogs there. We're all dressed up in March Madness. March Madness stuff. So, Luck of the Irish stuff. And it's fun. And we do a fun run with the dogs. And that's
is it an actual run? Like a 5K or something? Or
yes, it is a 5K.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. And the fast runners take their dogs way out in front. I let my husband go with our dog because he's a faster runner. And I'm kind of like doing my own pace behind.
Yeah, our dogs are very slow. They're Labradoodles, so they'll run for about a mile and then they'll just lay down and they're done.
Oh, this race is good for all kinds, but it's great because it raises funds for rescue dogs and cats and other animals. But it's a fun way to get out in San Diego, and I'm not sure if everyone knows that it exists, but it's every March.
Yeah, I have no idea, and I hear a ton about dog runs, and there's always different activities for dogs, and tons of great restaurants and beaches. There's so many fun places for dogs, definitely. And
sometimes they're out, sometimes for years it's held in the mountains, and then recently it was held at Embarcadero downtown. I believe the one for this coming year is Embarcadero as well.
Okay, wow. Yeah. Well, is there any final tips that you want to give people that are trying to share their message but just so confused or scared?
Well, I would like to encourage you that you have a voice, that you have a message that only some people can hear. And so whether that be used in church or at work or at the community at large or at schools, step into it, because your voice matters. And I believe when we use our voice, and especially when we're in the Christian community, we think about God will be honored and people will be blessed. Yeah. But that won't happen if we don't step up and use our voice.
Wow. Well, that's a really powerful message, and it's really nice to have you today. I'm so excited to hear more about your coaching. And if anyone else wants to get a hold of Mary Ann, how do we get a hold of you?
They can go to my website, which is at www.kingdompresenters.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to have you today.
Thank you, Amanda. A pleasure to be here.
Yeah.